History remembers the big names, doesn't it? Kings and sultans, like Richard the Lionheart and the great Saladin. Akita. Their stories are woven in gold, full of epic battles and legendary deeds. But what about the other stories? The ones stained with sorrow, buried under the weight of empires and holy wars. This is one of those tales, a work of historical fiction based on real events. It's not about kings, but about ordinary people. A promise that was made, and a future that was stolen. It's a story of how, in the shadow of one of history's greatest conflicts, a single day could shatter a life, and how an unlikely friendship could become the only thing left to live for. On the day he was supposed to marry the love of his life, a young man named Tariq wasn't listening for wedding bells. He was listening for screams. The year was 1174, and after the death of the great ruler Nur al-Din, a power vacuum had opened up. Saladin, the ambitious ruler of Egypt, was marching on Damascus to claim it for himself. For Tariq, this wasn't some grand political event. It was the thunder that marked the end of his world. In just a moment, his future wasn't as a husband, but as a survivor. Lost, alone, his life was saved not by a soldier, but by the quiet words of a man most people had written off, a cleric with a dangerous past. Before the soldiers arrived, Damascus was a city bursting with life. For Tariq, a young stonemason's apprentice, his heart was a woman named Layla. Theirs was a love match, a rare thing in an age where marriages were often just contracts. They'd grown up in the winding alleys of the old city, their futures tangled together like the jasmine vines on the courtyard walls. Their wedding was going to be simple, a celebration of a love that felt as old and solid as the city stones Tariq worked with his hands. But history rarely cares about personal plans. A few years earlier, in 1171, Saladin had abolished the Shia Fatimid Caliphate in Egypt, shifting the region's power firmly to Sunni Islam. This wasn't just politics. It was a religious earthquake. In cities like Damascus, this created a climate of uncertainty. Those with past loyalties or different beliefs started looking over their shoulders. One of them was Ibrahim, a quiet cleric and scholar. He was a man of books. But his studies under past Fatimid patronage now made him a potential dissident in the new world Saladin was building. He watched the rising fervor with a scholar's worry, fearing that this drive for unity might be forged in the fire of persecution. When Saladin marched on Damascus in November 1174, he claimed to be the rightful heir to Nur al-Din's vision of a united front against the Crusaders. He entered the city with very little bloodshed, invited in by the governor himself. But for the people inside, it was still chaos. In the confusion, families were scattered. Tariq's wedding feast turned to ashes. He and Layla were separated in the panicked crowds. For days he searched, his desperate calls swallowed by the noise of a city under new management. But he found nothing. Layla, his future, was simply gone, broken, and spiraling into grief. Tariq was found in the shadow of the great Umayyad mosque by the one man who seemed to see his pain, the cleric Ibrahim. Ibrahim took the boy in. He saw in Tariq's eyes a reflection of the era's turmoil, a personal tragedy born from the ambitions of powerful men. Tariq was eaten up by one single desire, vengeance. But against who? The soldiers, the shifting politics, the faceless fate that had stolen his love. Ibrahim, whose own world had been turned upside down, didn't preach. He listened. He gave Tariq not empty words, but a purpose. He channeled the young man's raw energy into study. He taught him to read, to understand history, and to see the world not just as a series of random cruelties, but as a complex web of cause and effect. Years passed. Under Ibrahim's guidance, Tariq's hands, once skilled with a mason's hammer, learned to use a scholar's pen. But the fire in his heart never went out. It just smoldered, waiting. He also trained in secret, his body becoming as sharp as his mind. He was a paradox, a man of letters with the soul of a warrior, torn between Ibrahim's world of wisdom and his own desperate need for answers. The bond between them deepened into that of a father and son, an alliance of two souls displaced by the currents of history. Ibrahim, the scholar with a complicated past, and Tariq, the grief-stricken groom, found a shared home in their quiet rebellion against the age. Then, whispers arrived with the merchant caravans. Tales of a woman from Damascus, matching Layla's description, living in Christian-held territory near the coast. Hope, a feeling Tariq had long since buried, roared back to life. At the same time, a call to arms echoed across the land. After years of consolidating his power, Saladin was ready to fulfill his ultimate goal, to launch a holy war and reclaim Jerusalem from the Crusaders. For Saladin, it was destiny. For Tariq, it was a chance. The war offered a path, however bloody, to the Crusader lands where Layla might be. In 1187, Saladin's call for jihad was answered. Tariq, now a man hardened by loss and knowledge, joined the ranks of the Ayyubid army. Ibrahim pleaded with him, warning that a personal quest for vengeance in the middle of a holy war would only lead to more pain. But Tariq wouldn't be stopped. He would fight under Saladin's banner, not for God or a sultan, but for the ghost of a lost love. He was at the Battle of Hattin. On that blistering July day, he witnessed Saladin's tactical genius firsthand as the Crusader army was lured into a waterless trap and completely destroyed. It was a massive victory that shattered the strength of the Crusader kingdoms. Tariq fought with a cold, precise fury, his scholar's mind making him a surprisingly effective soldier. He survived the slaughter, his eyes on the real prize, Jerusalem. As Saladin's forces laid siege to the holy city, Tariq's search grew frantic. The city surrendered on October 2nd, 1187. In a move that would define his legacy, Saladin showed a degree of mercy, allowing Christian inhabitants to ransom their lives, a stark contrast to the massacre that happened when Crusaders first took the city 88 years earlier. While Ibrahim, who had followed the army as a religious advisor, praised the Sultan's clemency, Tariq didn't see it. He just moved through the crowds of the defeated, his heart a cold knot of hope and fear. And then he saw her. Across a crowded square, he saw Layla. It was her. But the reunion he'd played out in his mind for over a decade died in an instant. She wasn't a captive. She wasn't waiting for him. She was with a Frankish merchant, 2 small children clinging to her side. When she saw him, her eyes widened, not with joy, but with the terrified shock of seeing a ghost. She had believed him dead, mourned him, and over 13 years had built a new life from the ashes of the old. The love of his life was a stranger. In the very moment of Saladin's greatest triumph, Tariq suffered his most profound defeat. The war hadn't just taken Layla from him, it had erased the woman he was fighting for. The fall of Jerusalem sent shockwaves through Europe, sparking the Third Crusade. Great kings of the West, including Richard the Lionheart of England, arrived to take back the Holy Land. The war Tariq had joined for his own reasons now became a grinding, brutal conflict for survival. The man who had found Layla was gone, replaced by a hollow shell, a soldier fighting for nothing. He was no longer a groom, a scholar, or a seeker. He was just another casualty. In 1191, at the Battle of Arsef, Richard the Lionheart's disciplined forces clashed with Saladin's army. It was a rare, clear defeat for the Sultan. In the chaos of the retreat, Tariq fell, a crusader's lance in his side. He was carried from the field, his life bleeding out onto the scorched earth. Ibrahim found him in a medical tent, the scholar's robe stained with his adopted son's blood. There as life faded from him, Tariq finally spoke of what he saw in Jerusalem. He confessed his hollow quest, the bitterness of his discovery, and the soul-crushing weight of a war fought for nothing. In his final breaths, the rage that had burned for 17 years finally cooled. He looked at the old cleric, the man who had saved his body and tried to save his soul and found something like peace. Tariq died just months before Saladin and Richard, exhausted by war, signed a treaty in 1192. Saladin himself would die the following year, his vast empire soon to be divided. Conclusion and call to action. In the end, Tariq's story is just one of thousands lost to history. He wasn't a king or a great general. He was a young man whose love was swept away by the winds of war. His fictional tale is a reminder of the immense human cost hidden behind the celebrated victories and chivalrous legends of the Crusades. True to his nature, Ibrahim didn't let Tariq's life be forgotten. In our story, he uses his influence to establish a small school, not just for religion, but for poetry and history. A place dedicated to remembering that behind every banner and every battle cry are personal stories of love, loss, and the enduring search for peace. The grand narrative of Saladin's era is one of holy war and unification. But its foundation is built upon the silent, heartbreaking tales of people like Tariq and the quiet wisdom of men like Ibrahim. If you found this story moving, please consider subscribing and liking the video. History is filled with these unspoken tales, and by sharing them, we help keep the human element of our past alive. Let us know in the comments which overlooked corners of history you'd like to explore next.